So in this video, I'm talking about what happens when you stop weight training. Now, I know a lot of people get some degree of anxiety when they even contemplate the idea of stopping training. Even if it means going away for a couple of weeks on vacation to enjoy themselves, they feel that they can't stop training. And of course, we also have scenarios where because of work or family commitments or even injuries, you may be forced to take some time away from the gym. And the first thing that comes to mind is, am I going to lose my muscles? Am I going to lose my strength? Are all my gains going to go away? Am I going to get fat? And in this video, I'm going to break down step by step, week by week, and go over exactly what happens to your body while you are going through what's called detraining, which is the fancy word for saying you're not training anymore. And you might be surprised that a short layoff of 2 to 3 weeks can actually make you stronger and put you in a place where you're more likely to make more progress over time. Stay tuned. We'll talk more about this. So in this video, we're talking about what happens when you stop training. And before I go any further, I'd like to thank everyone for the tremendous support that I've had so far for this channel. Thank you so much. And also thanks to those who say this is a one-stop resource for anyone interested in training naturally. I really and truly appreciate it. Now, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell as well so you're first in line to get the new content as it comes out. And I'm working tirelessly to put out new content as quickly as I can, so stay tuned. So back to our topic at hand. What happens when you stop training? And as I mentioned before, there are lots of reasons, some of them really good ones, why you may have to stop training. And I understand completely how much anxiety someone could sometimes feel about the idea of stopping training because you work so hard to build muscle. You work so hard to chisel in those abs. You work so hard to lose those pounds on the scale. And there's always that feeling that if you stop training, you're going to lose it all. I'm going to reassure you by saying that you're not going to always lose it all, depending on how you train, what kind of training you're doing, and of course, how long of a break you take off. But for short periods of time in general, it's usually not that big of a deal. So we start with 1 week. If you take 1 week off from training, what happens is exactly that. Absolutely nothing. A week off from training, if you're training intensely, isn't going to make almost any difference whatsoever in your ability to lift the weights that you lift, nor will it make any difference in the way that you look physically. Your muscles aren't going to deflate in a week. It's just simply not going to happen. So if for whatever reason you have to skip a week at the gym, do not worry about it, which right there segues into an important part of how our muscles work. Remember, when you're training, you're breaking down muscle fibers. You're creating micro trauma, small tears in the muscle. When those tears are repaired while you're resting, that's when muscles get bigger and stronger. That's when you get the gains in strength because the muscle increases this cross-sectional area, which allows you to generate more force, which makes you stronger. It's a great thing, but it only happens while you're resting. So taking a week off is actually a good idea every once in a while because it actually can make you stronger. If you take 2 weeks off from training, here's what happens. There's a slight decrease in your overall VO2 max. Now, your VO2 max is just a fancy way of saying your maximum endurance capabilities. So you're going to find yourself out of breath a little faster than you would have been if you were training consistently after 2 weeks of inactivity. A 7% drop in your overall endurance capabilities isn't really noticeable unless you're a truly elite athlete, but you may feel lousy because psychologically, the idea of not training for 2 weeks for a lot of people can be overwhelming. But again, here's the important thing. After that 2 week period of being off, when you come back, you're fresh. And psychologically as well, because you missed 2 weeks, it tends to make you appreciate a little bit more the whole idea of training. Sometimes a 2 week break, especially if you go away on vacation and do something different, even though you're having fun, you tend to have very positive thoughts about training because you miss it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to miss your training because it means when you come back, you can be even more dedicated than you were before that 2 week break. Now, after 3 weeks of not training, that's when things start getting interesting. If you do high intensity training, you may have a loss of about 9% of your overall endurance ability. So a 9% decrease is just enough where you'd probably notice a slight difference in your overall performance and how you feel in terms of being winded after doing a particular activity. Or when you go back to the gym and start back training, you may be able to lift the same amount of weights that you normally lift, but you'll feel a little bit more out of breath, shall we say, while you're training. Totally normal. And here's the important thing. Those who train at high intensities only lose about 9% of their overall VO2 max. But the less intensity that you have with your training, the more of a VO2 max decrease that you're going to have after 3 weeks. What's fascinating about the initial drop in your overall VO2 max over the first few days of detraining is that while it's associated with reduced heart stroke volume, this drop in performance that you experience has not that much to do with a loss of any cardiovascular function per se, as it occurs because of reduction in blood volume. That's right. You might not know this, but high intensity training usually results in an increase in your overall blood volume by about 500 milliliters or so from an expansion in your plasma volume. It's an adaptation that occurs fairly quickly only after a few sessions of high intensity training, and that increased blood volume means more oxygen rich blood is available to your needy muscles when they're training really, really hard. The decrease in blood volume from detraining means your heart will pump less blood with each stroke. However, like I said, this isn't a sign of any deterioration of cardiovascular ability, as the decreases in VO2 max and stroke volume are reversed completely when blood volume expands to pre-detraining values. So, as a result, individuals engaged regularly in high intensity training for several years tend to suffer little, if any, real reduction in overall heart function during short periods of inactivity. So, keep that in mind next time you think about going on vacation, or if, God forbid, you end up being injured and have to spend some time away from your training. So after 3 weeks of not training, muscle mass stays more or less the same, although depending on how intensely you're training, you're going to have some differences in how much muscle mass you'll lose. For example, if you train at high intensity, you're probably not going to have any muscle mass decrease whatsoever over a 3 week period. If you train at moderate intensities or lower intensities, you may have a tiny decrease in overall muscle mass over a 3 week period, which you shouldn't worry about because, again, when you start back training, you're going to put that muscle right back on. So 3 weeks isn't that big of a deal in terms of losing muscle mass or overall strength. Now, weeks 4 to 8, things get a little bit different. Between 4 to 8 weeks off, most people are going to see some reduction in overall muscle mass, some reduction in overall muscle strength. If you're training at low intensity, you're going to lose almost all the endurance that you built up as a result of your training. It only takes 4 to 8 weeks to lose it completely if you're training at low intensity. The more intensely you train, the more adaptations that your heart's going to go through, which is also going to mean the longer it's going to take for you to see a significant decrease in your overall endurance. At this point, there seems to be a reduction in fast twitch muscle fibers. And those are the muscle fibers are the ones that increase the most in terms of size and the one that gives the greatest effect in terms of increasing the amount of calories that you burn daily. Women unfortunately seem to be particularly affected by detraining, as they naturally have less muscle mass than their male counterparts, and they do appear to lose muscle at a faster rate. So at the 8 to 12 week period, you will see some differences in your overall physique. Strength wise, you should expect to lose about 7 to 12% of your overall strength in a layoff ranging from 8 to 12 weeks. This loss of strength 8 to 12 weeks out comes because you're losing a little bit of muscle mass, and you're also losing a little bit of your neural muscle activation capacity. The good news is for beginners that their recently acquired strength gains isn't going to be lost as much when compared to seasoned athletes who have been training consistently for longer periods of time. So if you're a beginner, even though you will lose some strength, you can rest assured and know that you will always be stronger than you were before you actually started training in the first place. Now, 21 weeks and onwards, you're going to see an almost complete loss of your overall VO2 max from exercise among those who train regularly at moderate intensities. If you train at high intensity, however, you're still going to retain some degree of overall endurance compared to someone who's training at moderate intensities. And here's where you really start seeing the decrease in overall muscle mass. Studies find that most people will lose about 1/3 of their overall muscle mass after 21 weeks or so of not training. That's a little bit over 5 months. That's how long it takes for most people to start getting to that place where you can see a significant change, where you can look at someone and say, all right, they used to go to the gym and they're working out and making some progress, and now they look like they've lost something. Now, strength's a little bit different as it's a little bit more individual, and it does decline, but a little bit more individually based on how strong you were, how long you're training, and how intensely you're training. Interestingly enough, though, even if you never trained again another day in your life, your strength levels will always be higher than what it was before you started training. Mentally, you might not feel that way. In fact, mentally, you may feel like you're much weaker than you ever were because you remember how much weight you used to be able to lift and you can't do that weight anymore. You feel weaker, but you're always going to be physically stronger than you were when you first started off. And that's something that's very important to keep in mind if someone gets injured and for whatever reason, God forbid, they're not able to ever go back into the gym. You will always be stronger for every single time you go to the gym and do some form of workout, which is something also to be considered for those who hesitate to go to the gym because they think that they can't keep it up. Just going there, even if you go for a short period of time and you quit, it's not that you lose everything. You never lose everything. In fact, whatever muscle mass that you did put on, you can always put it back on much faster the second time around because of something called muscle memory. Because it's much easier for your body to go back to where it was than to get there in the first place. So it's always a good idea to lift some weight, even if you think you're going to quit after only a couple of months. Now, we've been focusing on how much strength you're going to lose when you stop training and how much muscle mass you're going to lose when you stop training. But what most people are really interested in is how much body fat you're going to put on when you stop training. And what studies show is that over a 21-week period, if you stop training, and what studies seem to show is that after a 21-week period, if you don't make adjustments to your overall caloric intake, there can be a significant increase in body fat overall 21 weeks after you stop training. Now, the reason is, think of it this way. Muscle is metabolically active. So muscle requires a certain amount of energy just to maintain it. So if you lose, let's say 1/3 of your overall muscle mass because you stop training completely, and you're eating the same amount of calories that you were while you were training, but you're also no longer training. So you are going to see an increase in overall body fat. Also, the decrease in activity because you're no longer training is going to put you in a place where you're more conducive to putting on more body fat. And most people will see a significant change in how they look 21 weeks after not training at all if they don't make adjustments to their diet. So, that being said, if you do have to take a layoff for about 20 weeks or longer, it's important to drop your calories. Eat a little bit less. Now, again, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, not that much of a change actually could be beneficial. So don't think about time off necessarily as a bad thing because in a lot of ways, it's an actually good thing. Rest is good. One of the good things though is that going on vacation today is a lot different from what it was when I used to go on vacation years and years ago. In that hotels now tend to have gyms, which makes it more convenient. And because online training has become so much more popular, you can keep your workouts going even though you're away on vacation. Keep in mind as well that bodyweight exercises can do a lot, not just to preserve muscle mass and muscle strength, but also increase it as well as an important tool you should consider having in your arsenal if you're going to be away from the gym for periods of time. So if you have to take a break, don't worry about it. Enjoy your time off. If you're injured, don't worry about it too much as well. Do the best you can. But keep in mind, if you put the time in, you're always going to come back in a place where getting back to where you were is going to be easier. Thanks again for tuning in and Excelsior.